Shalom, family. This is the initiation into yoga, chapter 3, the sacred marriage. The essentially creative act is the union of opposites. In mere mathematics, the conjunction of a plus with an equal minus results in zero. But in the realm of real experience, this is not so. The union of a positive with the negative result in the rain out of a new creation. In fact, it is in this way that all true creation takes place. As Blake puts it, without contraries, there is no progression. Out of the marriage of the light and dark halves of the soul, the wonderful new birth, the spiritual birth, takes place. A new which cannot happen so long as we artificially isolate one half of ourselves, calling it good, respectable, etc. With such isolation of all that we approve in ourselves to the exclusion of all the rest leads and can only lead to psychic sterility. We are afraid of all that is dark within ourselves, not realizing that it is but the shadow of what is light and therefore inseparable from it. The wisdom that is hidden in ancient myths should have sufficed to warn us of the misfortune that pursues the man who has lost his shadow. It will be objected that the gods cast no shadows. This is quite true. But gods are not men. In their case, the shadows, which are their counterparts, have their separate or semi-separate existence. And that is one reason for the teaching that gods must become men, uniting light with shadow before they can achieve the goal of liberation. In man, the universal divine powers came to a focus, and therefore in his heart there must always be darkness as well as a light. But we are afraid of the darkness as such. We people it with bogies, which then terrifies us more. Because of our fear of what is dark in our hearts, the dark itself becomes hostile to us, though its hostility is in truth but the projection of our own fears. It becomes to us the dark unknown, the dwelling of the terrible dragon woman, the eater up of children, the witch, sinister and evil. We seek to flee away, but forever she follows us as our shadow. And instead of our psychic energies being poured forth in creation, it is drained away in wastage behind. Yet, if we but turn around and face the shadow, everything is changed. The devouring nightmare becomes the source of inspiration. The malignant which becomes the beneficent goddess, and from the union of light and darkness shines a radiance that is beyond all that we know as light, a light that never knows on sea or land. How does this work out in practice? That which we love draws us ever upwards, outwards into the light. But that which we hate, the shadow of what we love, draws us equally backwards with it bond of fear. That which we seek lures us onwards. At the same time, all that is not included in that sought seeks us in turn and pulls us back towards it. We seek the sun, but we ourselves are sought by the moon, and between these two forces, we are held in motionless sterility. The sun is the light of life, but the moon is the light of wisdom, which shines at its full when in opposition to the sun. Hence, it is that in order to find wisdom, we must follow the example of Nakik Itas, the hero of the Kathopanishad, and plunge boldly into the death kingdoms of the night, for it is only there that we can learn of the secret causes which govern the phenomena of light. The hidden currents which carry forward the ship of the psyche. It is on the full moon night that the Buddha gained full enlightenment and saw deep into the causes of light. It was also on a full moon night that the Vaishaka, that he was born and also left his home to seek the truth. These two full moons have different meanings, for in the interval between the two, the polarity of the heavens has been entirely reversed. In the language of astrology, we may say that at the first, the Vaishaka moon of birth and going forth, the sun was in Aries, the sign of life, and the moon in Libra, or the balance. While at the time of enlightenment, the Sharat Purnima, according to certain traditions, it was the other way around. The sun in Libra being the balance between sun and day and night, and the moon in Aries in the house of life. Thus are exemplified the Bhagavad Gita's words about what is day to the many being night to the seer, and vice versa. The union of opposites is the great principle of the inner life. It is useless to imagine that we can have the one pole without the other, for all that happens is that in our frenzied efforts to isolate and develop the one, we begin about an automatic degradation of the other, which thereby becomes ugly and our enemy. Let us consider this in the concrete. The state we know as greed is one of the distinctly unpleasant aspects of human nature. But what is greed and how does it arise? There are two processes in the psyche, just as there are two in the universe. One a giving out and the other a taking in. For good reasons, these two have been symbolized certain ancient times by the outgoing and ingoing breath. And the moment we have said this, we are forced to realize that the two are entirely interdependent. Both of them are necessary and should be, as in yogic breathing, entirely balanced. The one is as necessary to psychic and physical health as the other. Greed, then, is a distorted manifestation of the in breath. If the in manifestation has become something ugly and sorrow producing, it can only be because the corresponding out breath has been emphasized in some exaggerated and one sided way. We must not be misled by the commonplace antithesis of giving and getting, in which one is considered good or the other bad. If our getting has become ugly, it is because our giving. If our getting has become ugly, it is because our giving has become unwise and unbalanced. The process of giving, the out breath, is the projection of ourselves upon the universe around us. To breathe upon a person or animal is one of the ancient magical ways of establishing our power over him, of bringing him under our control. This alone is sufficient to show us where we have gone wrong. We give in the most general sense in order that we may thereby bind the recipients of our gifts to ourselves. In other words, that we may bring them under our control. It is for this reason that so much so-called charity and philanthropy is offensive, and that Patanjali warns would-be yogis against the receiving of gifts. Looked at in this way, the process of giving, as it is usually practiced, it is just as ugly as that of getting. But we are so hypnotized by the conventional overvaluation of giving that we indiscriminately label it good and fail to see that it can be as definitely egotistic as its opposite, getting. And yet we all recognize the unsatisfactory nature of the millionaire's charity and perceive the hidden selfishness of the man who, with the tense fanaticism, insists on doing good to his fellows. There is no use then in trying to root our greed from our natures by making a direct attack on it. Greed is merely an exaggeration of one of the essential movements of our nature, a movement that is, in itself is perfectly healthy and absolutely necessary to manifest life on any plane. If we wish to destroy its ugliness and harmfulness, we must first find out what is the exaggeration which has brought about the morbid condition. And to do that, as we have seen, means looking in the opposite quarter of the heavens, the opposite pole of the psyche, instead of the forceful, ego directed out breathing, which is designed to influence and control others. We should breathe out calmly and in detachment. But just because it is our nature to breathe out, giving should be a process which streams out from us as easily and naturally as light streams out from the sun, unattached to the objects it falls upon, and indifferent to whether it is received by the earth or is lost in space. To the extent to which we can achieve such giving, we shall find that our greed, as we know it, has vanished, leaving in its place something which no one would think of calling greed, but which is nevertheless its healthy and real substratum. The process of breathing in or getting. In Sanskrit, these two processes are known as yoga keshma, kshema, a compound which has been used in various senses, but of which the first part, yoga, signifies the outgoing breath which unites with yuj or projects into things as kashema, and getting or safe preservation of what is acquired. The yogi, as the Bhagavad Gita tells us, is to be niryoga kashema, beyond or detached from these two. This detachment he gains by the characteristic yogic technique of harmonizing the out breath with the in breath, a process which is utterly stupid to take on the physical level alone. Let us take another pair of opposites, the most fundamental of all, the pair known as life and death. Why is it that death is so ugly and gloomy to us? To term a person or thing deathly is to say the worst thing that can be said of him or it. A thing may be deadly, causing death to others, and still appear beautiful. But if we give it the adjective deathly, we have given it the ugliness term we know. And yet death is but the shadow of life, and can therefore only derive its ugliness from an ugliness in the life which throws the shadow, or rather, in our attitude to the conception of that life. Once more, life is the outbreath, death is the corresponding intake. Life is the sun, positive, active, and male. Death is the moon, negative, receptive, and female. It is true that in another sense, life is assimilation or intake. The death and outgoing or passing on, but this contradiction is only apparent and in reality supports our general statement, for it shows the presence in each of its opposite. It is a well-known saying that death is eternal life, and we may add with no less truth that eating is dying. With every mouthful of food that we eat, and not only gross physical food, we are taking death into ourselves. Hence the statement that the yogi who seeks to conquer death should abstain from all food. The actual states that we know as life and death are compound states, resultants of the interaction of the two poles. Death gnaws at the heart of life, while life triumphs in the very midst of death. Blow, blow bugles, blow set the wild echoes flying, and echo answers, dying, dying, dying. Death is the Isis upon whose unveiled face no man has ever looked. For her death, for her throne is beyond the boundaries of manifested thing of being, as indeed is the throne of life. No man has ever truly gazed upon life or death as they are in themselves, but only upon the various interactions of the two which constitute the whole of the manifested universe. It is the failure to recognize this inevitable intertwining of the life and death that is the cause of death appearing so terrible to us. We avidly pursue life, and therefore we are ourselves pursued by the sinister figure of death. We long for life, stretch out our arms to protect it, our arms to it, project ourselves into it, and therefore death longs for us, reaches forth his arms to grasp us, lies in wait for us to at every turn and draws us to himself. Side note is in both Hindu and Buddhism tradition, there are four types of ahara or food. These are usually misunderstood to mean four types of physical food, whereas in truth, one is physical or material, and the other three are what is termed superphysical. Interesting. All right. We are living, we are life, we are the sun, we triumph, we radiate around, asserting ourselves in the face of the cosmos. We banish from ourselves all that militates against life. 1,000,000 men are dying, and countless millions have already died. Away with such pale ghosts. Let them be gone from our sight. Triumphantly, we use our intellects, will those willing tools of our desires, to prove that there are and can be no such things as ghosts. We turn night into day, using all our scientific knowledge to light up the night, so that we never have to face the darkness, nor even see the unresting turning of the wheel of fate above us and all the heavens. And so, too, with that other night, the night of winter, can we not cheat it by taking ships to the antipodes in search of summer? Can we not, even with the help of steel and steam and glass, make little private summers in our house? Assuredly, we are the masters of fate. Men that love lightly may die, but there shall be no night, no winter, and no death for us. A savage tribe kills a missionary in Africa. The tribe must be annexed and brought into our system. The river Thames floods its banks and drowns 6 people in London. This is an outrage, and the whole land clamors that the Wanton River must be bidded. Disease carries away great numbers of us. At once we produce our treasured coins, those golden tokens of the golden solar disk, and pour them out in hospitals and in research, confident that with our overflowing life, we shall succeed in banishing the hateful specters. This foe has been slain by me. Others also shall slay tomorrow. I am the ruler, the enjoyer. I am the accomplished one, powerful and happy, thus deluded with unwisdom. Deluded by unwisdom? Yes, assuredly. Do what we will. Our fate, furious and hostile as a woman scorned, pursues us with im- implacable steps, and we, uh, like one that on a lonesome road doeth walk in fear and dread, and having once looked back, walks on and turns no more his head, because he knows a frightful fiend doeth close behind him tread. Interesting. We press on, denying our family, denying history, denying the whole magical eternity of the past in our frenzied efforts to escape. The fatal lunar arrows of cancer strike our bodies down in increasing numbers, and the same malignant which shreds our minds into the tatters of neurosis and actual lunacy. Fear descends upon us like a cold, poisonous fog, obscuring the beloved sun from our sight, so that we can no longer see our way in the darkness that wraps us around. Under our very feet, the solid earth of our beautiful civilization opens in cracks and fissures from which, in answers to the lunar pool, some welling up the deep, abysmal waters which swirl around us, bring madness with their touch. It is no use. We cannot cheat the unity of being. In breath must follow out breath. Night must follow day. Winter must follow summer. And death must follow life. We must turn round and face the moon with friendly and not with blind and with timid eyes. We must cease from overvaluing and projecting all our fantasies upon life. If we are to escape being shattered by the echoes from the undervalued death, let us remember that we have a back as well as a front, and that however bravely we may march forward, protected by the golden breastplate of the sun, our backs are none the less defenseless before the keen arrows of the moon, who, as Artemis hunts with her dogs in the dark forest of the night. It is for this reason that the stab in the back, treachery from our followers, the snake in the grass, and even the commonplace window at our back, or the reflection of someone behind us glimpsed in the mirror, are all, in varying degrees, objects of dread to us. We're not all the solar heroes thus smitten from behind. Remember Hercules dying of the treacherously given poisoned shirt, Siegfried stabbed in the back, Karna slain while his chariot wheels stuck fast in the mud, Akhenaten struck down by a lunar disease, Ra overcome by the poisonous snake that set in his path by the guileful Isis, Agamemnon, king of Mem, slain in his triumph by his crafty wife, and Arthur perishing in mystic sea-girt Lyonese through the treachery of his own kinsman Mordred. Deep in the caves of the soul is hidden the wisdom which alone can teach us to avoid this fate. There, in those caves, as in the ancient mysteries of Ulysses, must be brought about the sacred marriage of the sun and moon. Sir Ramchandra of the solar race must bow at the feet of lunar Durga if the Vijaya or victory is to be achieved. And it is notable that the timeless wisdom of the Indian tradition begins to feast of the great goddess, which 1 month before the moon of enlightenment that is to follow, the moon at which the gates of immortality are open wide for all who have the eye to see and the heart to follow. At the festival of Durga, the sun is in the sign of marriage, Libra. And as he set upon the western horizon, the moon shines above him in the mid-heaven to receive his worship. Then, as the moon descends into opposition, the sacred marriage is achieved. The tension from both becomes equal and opposite, and the soul brought by those tensions to the very center of the sphere of being, stands between day and night, and poised serenity, master of fate, lord of the mystic year. That is what happens to him who can see the true moon, the moon of which our satellite is but symbol, and having seen, can face with fearless eyes her calm, immortal gaze, and receive without shrinking the cold waters of the wisdom dew, which she sheds in his warm heart, gently and imperceptibly. That dew falls, cooling the fever of desire, each shining drop reflecting in its heart the cyclic starry wheel of life and death that turns in calm, eternal majesty above it in the heavens. Thus in the soul takes place the immaculate conception of the wisdom, immaculate since neither man nor book have fathered it, but the eternal all-embracing heaven, that heaven whose changeless, ever-changing rhythm is now imprinted on the petals of the soul, Till the end of time, that imprint will endure, and against it neither life nor death will ever prevail. Never again will the soul breathe itself forth one-sidedly upon the waves of space, saying in fiery, self-driven exultation, this sun, this universe, I am I. All this is mine, but never also will it feel the grim reaction, the dark withdrawal of the ebbing sea, nor hear. Side note, okay. Approximately September, October, the date varies because of the lunar calendar. At Ulysses, the sacred marriage of the Great Mother was celebrated at approximately the same season. One more side note: in a when in opposition to the sun, the moon is at the full. In astrological symbolism, the house of the marriage partner, the seventh, is opposite to the house of the native, the first, thus reflecting both the agreement of marriage and the conflict. All right. Nor here, not that these two movements will cease in stone-like immobility. Okay, poem. Its melancholy, long withdrawing roar, retreating to the breath of the night wind, down the vast edges, drear and naked shingles of the world. Interesting. It is only for a brief moment that nature can be still. As long as the universe shall last, so long will sun and moon weave out their mystic pattern of gold and silver on the loom of time, the pattern of in-breath and out-breath, the pattern of life and death. What changes is that no longer does the soul identify itself exclusively with the golden thread, and therefore there is no longer forcibly seized by the other, the silver one, and no longer is that shining silver tarnished and blackened, as formerly, by the sulfur of desire. Instead, the starry wisdom of the night will blend with the living radiance of the day, so that the two form one harmonious pattern, as we read in the Ishopanishad, projection and withdrawal. He who knows these two together, by knowledge of wisdom, having passed beyond death, by knowledge of projection, gains immortality. Or, in the symbolism we have adopted here, to one who knows the moon, death is no longer what it is to most, a thing of fear or terror, while by the knowledge of the living sun, the soul enjoys eternity of life. Thus is wisdom conceived in the depths of the soul by the union of opposites, the sacred marriage of the sun and moon. Before its actual birth or manifestation, there is still some time that must elapse. Did not the Buddha himself, after the enlightenment, spend several weeks sitting under the mystic trees in profound peace before commencing his actual teaching? This too is indelibly inscribed in the bright symbols of the heavens above us. A fortnight after the full moon of wisdom comes the dark, moonless night of Diwali, the festival of lights, which corresponds to All Hallows Eve. The moon has joined the sun in the sign of the balance, and in the darkness strange things take place. It is the night of magic, the night when all the souls of the men come thronging from to the world of men to visit and unite in friendship with those who now dwell there. These souls are ghosts, who are the spirits of the womb of time. The past that has been lived and yet still lives comes to the embodied soul with a message of its solidarity, with all that has gone before. It is by standing on the shoulders of 1,000 vanished ages, profiting by the sacrifices of 1,000,000 vanished lives, that the soul has reached its present poise of wisdom. Must it not then have a duty to perform, the duty of handing on its wisdom to the lives that are yet to come, so that thereby the past may be linked with the future by the living bonds of experience. Deep in the soul itself are all those vanished lives, and there too are those as yet unborn. The continuity must not be broken, and therefore, out of the magical darkness, the voice of the suffering past, the voice of all who have lived, suffered, and died, in order that the soul may stand where it now does, the rise from the depths, which its message of duty. Out of the silence that is peace, a resonant voice shall arise, and this voice will say, "It is not well. Thou hast reaped, now thou must sow." And knowing this voice to be the silence itself, thou wilt obey. Light on the path. This is the mysterious quickening of the inner birth. And shortly after, just as the sun is about to enter Scorpio, the sign of death and of the mystic rebirth, there comes the festival of the divine birth, the birth of Kartikeya, the beautiful, the glorious son of sun and fire, son of fire and water, who, fostered by the wives of the seven rishis, the seven stars of the great bear of Polo or plow, became commander of the heavenly host. Mounted on the peacock of a starry heavens, his 12 hands showing his mastery of the 12-bodied wheel of fate, armed with the bow of yogic will, he slays the demon Taraka, enemy of the gods. Just so in ancient Egypt did the youthful, falcon-headed Horus, divine son of the dead Osiris, slay Set, the malignant demon of the dark. Side note, the Kritika, from which the name Kartikeya derives, are the Pleiades, corresponding to one of the 27 lunar asterisms or mansions that mark the moon's course along the ecliptic. Once considered the first, marking the beginning of the lunar year, this asterism is personified as Kartikeya, lord of the heavenly host of stars. Like many other archaic festivals, the festival of the Kartikeya dwindled with the rise of the great theistic cults, which rose to popularity for their greater human appeal, sometimes at the sacrifice of the cult significance which invested all the other symbolisms. Thus, it brought about the sacred birth in which, as we learn from the ancient mystery tradition, the initiator dies in handing on the word to his spiritual son. And thus, we return to our starting point, the new and magical creation that results from the union of opposites. And following it up, we have wandered round heaven and earth and perhaps have dazzled our eyes in the contemplation of great starry beings whose cycles are the light of all the worlds. Nevertheless, the principle involved is of the utmost practical importance to ourselves, even in ordinary life. Our lives, no less than those of such great beings, are woven of the tissue of the opposites. It is for us to learn that not by the attempted suppression of one of them in favor of the other, but by the balance and harmonious interplay of both, can we, ceasing to the mere processions of fate, live creatively and breaking away from the weary and sorrow-laden will, advance some steps towards the goal of freedom. There will be those whose, if they have had the patience to read so far, will ask impatiently, what is it all about? What are those suns and moons, these births and marriages? What do they all mean? Cannot the matter, if any matter exists behind this swirl of words, be set forth plainly and simply? To such it can only be replied that these are the symbols carved upon the doorway of the temple. However imperfect may be the transcription here. He who would pass within, and there is no compulsion, must gain the power to read them for himself. For if without that power he set foot within the gates, he will inevitably be lost in a world of illusions. Secondly, it must be stated that the so-called plain language of the modern thoughts is a language of the mind alone, while the knowledge that is sought is the knowledge that belongs to the soul. Hence, the uselessness is in these realms of the spurious clarity of a language merely rooted in the mind, and the necessity for learning to read and use the language of concrete symbols, which is, as it has always been, the language of the deeper psychic levels. And that is the end of chapter 3, the sacred message.